And welcome back to centralcoastradio.com. Well, because of the very special competition that we've got at the moment, where we're giving away tickets to Voyage of the Dementor, we thought that we would actually go a list kind of based around that, in that we would take a look at what are our favorite vampires, like who are our favorite actors that have played vampires, or who are our favorite vampires or Dracula on screen. So to kick off that list, let's start with you, Harley. Who are your favorite vampires when it comes to screen?
It's so funny that I was writing a vampire novel, so I did all this massive research into vampire fiction and downloaded like every movie imaginable. Do you think I could remember half of them when it came to this? I'm like, but it just goes to show that the couple that stand out are clearly the ones that make the most sense. Although during this conversation, there will be a couple of times where you guys will mention something, and I'm gonna just kick myself thinking, how did I forget that?
Yeah.
Because thinking of films, for example, there are things like Lost Boys, and like I like that series, but I can't say any of the vampires in it stand out as memorable characters to me. It's more about,
Who's playing
the
them?
lead characters. Like, so
Yeah.
yeah, it was kind of hard to put down exactly, yeah, who are the vampires that stand out? But I guess a few of the notable ones. I mean, like when it comes to Dracula, you said, I don't like Dracula as a character. I think it is so done to death. Like
Mm,
I
definitely.
just like make a vampire movie by all means, but stop making a Dracula movie. Like I don't know, it starts to lose its interest for me a bit. Although having just seen Renfield, I really did enjoy that, but
Remember they
mostly
made
for
remember they
Nick
made
Holt's
fun.
character.
Remember they made fun of Dracula in an episode of Buffy.
Yeah, yeah. What? You're the count? You like to count? One victims, two victims, three victims. Ha ha ha. But that's a nice segue into Buffy. And I have to give a shout out to Spike and Drusilla from Buffy
Yeah.
because they are the most standout vampires in that entire series. Spike, we get the whole journey of him turning good and getting a soul. Drusilla, just the craziness makes her so amazing to watch. Um, but yeah, well, actually, if we're gonna pick a Dracula as well, I'm gonna say Christopher Lee from the Hammer horror movies. I don't think anyone has kind of stayed in my mind as Dracula more than he. Even though, when they did the movie Bram Stoker's Dracula, it was probably more true to text than a lot of the Hammer horrors were, and they just did sequel after sequel after sequel. But just something about Christopher Lee in that role, that kind of menace, I really love that. But
Mm.
moving away from there, I think we can't go without mentioning Anne Rice's vampire novels, a couple of which have made it to film and now TV series. The character of Lestat de Liancourt, really interesting. You kind of hate him in Interview with a Vampire, but as you delve deeper into the series, you get this whole backstory and you realize, oh, hang on, there's another side to the story here. And the way he's just sort of unwrapped over time is really interesting. I don't know, did anyone else
Oh,
um
definitely.
follow
Yeah.
the series? Like, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like what in the like who do you think did it better in the movies of the Lestat character?
Well, I mean, look, the first one was all right, though I don't know why you would cast Tom Cruise as
Because
Lestat.
he's
But
Tom
anyway, but
Cruise.
yeah. But everyone was kind of like miscast. Like it was like, hang on, the vampire Armand is like this young, boyish,
16-year-old
blonde
boy.
character,
Yeah.
but now he's an older Spanish male. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
With long dark hair. It's like, okay, well, I guess we could take some liberties. But look, that was a good movie. The problem with the sequel is that for some reason they didn't want Anne Rice to write it, or the director
Mm.
didn't, and it just turned into this half-assed story with no real plot. It sort of didn't go anywhere, and all the major vampires who come in to fight the battle at the end are just name dropped, and they don't mean anything because you haven't seen them throughout the movie. I mean, you start to get Lestat's backstory, which is cool, so it's good for that, but not much else. I think they really missed the focus in doing the movies, but I haven't seen the TV series they've been doing yet. I'm not sure. It looks like it's been really kind of changed from what I can tell, but
If you thought the first movie was bad for miscasts.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's doing one of those things where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, historically inaccurate casting, but we're feeling a bit more woke these days. Like,
Yeah.
and I thought, well, look, I can get past that, and I saw a couple of scenes somewhere, and I just thought, hang on, that's not true to the characters, really. Like, if I'm understanding who these characters are, that just seemed wrong. But
Yeah.
to be fair, I haven't seen the whole thing, so I can't put judgment on it yet. But yeah, for vampire stories, look, there's a story that's been around for many, many years. I think it was originally more of a short story, but it was called Carmilla. And I think it's been done on screen a couple of times, but I don't know if it's ever been done very well. I got hold of one copy when I was doing my research, and I thought that doesn't follow the story at all. So I think the story of Carmilla is really good, but yeah, I want to see it done properly. But as for vampire characters, she's great. If anyone remembers Catherine Deneuve and David Bowie in the 80s doing The Hunger, yeah.
Yeah.
So Miriam and John Blaylock, that was quite cool. Like for the time, it had a real feel, and that's one I thought, yeah, I could watch that again. And actually, has anyone seen the one with Tom Hiddleston, Only Lovers Left Alive?
Yes, yeah.
No, I haven't seen that one.
I quite like that movie. I can't say like I'm gonna put them on the list of favorite vampires, but I really found that an interesting character piece, so that's good. But yeah, to kind of wrap it up, the the one at the top of my list are Count Orlok from Nosferatu, and I already mentioned the stunt. There's a movie in the 80s called Life Force, and the vampires in this are actually aliens. And so
The
it's
naked woman
it's
walking
this
through the whole
yeah,
movie.
basically
Yeah.
this space girl, they refer to her as, basically sucks the life out of the astronauts, comes down to Earth,
I
walking
bet she
around,
does.
yeah, in the buff. Just it's a real, but I love that for the different concept of like, hang on, vampires don't have to be this thing we've seen over and over. Here's a different way to do it. I thought that was really brilliant. And as I think I may have mentioned before on here, one of my all-time favorite vampire films is called Vampyr, Vampyr, German film made in 1932 or something like that. It was one of the earliest kind of speaky films, which had barely any speaking in it just because it was supposed to be done in 3 different languages. So it still has title cards and things like that popping up through it. But the vampire in that, which is kind of different to type, is an elderly woman named Marguerite Chopin. So yeah, it's a nice eerie tale. I think some of the effects they managed to achieve in that movie was brilliant for 1930s. I thought, wow, I know this is a almost silent old black and white film, but I love what they managed to pull off in that movie. And just as a different vampire character, she's always stuck in my head. I love this idea of this crone character who comes out and is creepy, but also it's a little bit unassuming to think this old lady, how can she overpower anyone? Like I love the whole feeling of that story. So yeah, those are my top tier vampires.
Okay, so Kyle, who are your favorite vampires?
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm kind of like Harley in a way. Like well, I've got some favorite movies and here and there, but like I'm actually not a huge fan of vampire movies. I think I only really kind of realized that as I was trying to put together a list. Um, and yeah, like I've enjoyed films here and there, and such as yeah, Renfield and Bram Stoker's Dracula and the original Nosferatu and stuff like that. Like a lot of them are I found to be quite interesting, but yeah, I haven't been a huge fan of them. But the one that I think really stood out to me, well, actually, it's connected to Nosferatu. It's well, the movie Nosferatu, the original one in the early 1900s, when it was made, I think it was so iconic and so weird, and the character of Count Olaf or Orlok, sorry, I think Olaf is from Hotel Transylvania. The Count Olaf,
Isn't that also Frozen?
Yeah.
yeah,
Is that one?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. My favorite vampire movie is Frozen. But yeah, the character of Count Orlok was played by an actor called Max Schreck, who
Yeah.
did the job so well that a lot of people like there was kind of like a bit of an urban legend or whatever that the filmmakers um had actually gotten a real vampire to play the part. That F.W. Murnau, the director of Nosferatu, had actually gotten a real vampire, and that's what this movie, Shadow of the Vampire, is inspired by.
Yes,
That
that was brilliant. I loved
yeah,
that for ages, that film.
that
Yeah.
one it's kind of like built around the whole just how ridiculous it is. It doesn't try at all to tie into history or um yeah or to even really keep very much in line with what how the film it's the actual Nosferatu movie itself looked like. I mean, of course, any kind of film historian or whatever would know that. Okay, this actor went on to live until the 70s, and this actor went on to live until the 80s, and but of course, these these characters in the movie Shadow of the Vampire, which is supposed to be about the making of Nosferatu with a real vampire, yeah, they're all being killed off, and it's like, well, no, that actor didn't die for another 60
Yeah,
years.
that used to kind of throw me when I first watched that movie. I'm like, wait, did that happen? No, surely not. Like,
Yeah. Did they just disappear while making the movie? Like, but I mean, The Shadow of the Vampire, it's a John Malkovich movie where he's playing the director F.W. Murnau, but of course, the real star of the movie is Willem Dafoe, who's playing not so much Count Orlok, but he's playing Max Schreck. Uh, and I think it's Max Schreck. Yeah, yeah, and
yeah, yeah.
yeah, because I can because Max Schreck that
Because
was the
that was the name of the
Batman.
villain in Batman
Yeah,
Returns,
that's
which
why I
I
was like,
love, and they kind of make him have that look. So it's like
yeah,
that always. This is why I was so attracted to Shadow of the Bat and Nosferatu.
yeah,
This is what made me watch them in the first place. I'm like,
mm,
wait, hang on, did is there a link there? Like,
yeah,
what was
yeah.
Tim Burton doing? Like,
And it was, yeah. That's because just me saying it there was like, wait a minute, that was that was Christopher Walken's character in Batman Returns. But yeah, just I really enjoyed Will. You just love Willem Dafoe in this movie that he has such a weird. I hate to say he has such kind of a weird look to
yeah,
begin with that yeah, being able when they do him up in makeup in this movie, he just looks really scary and he looks really terrifying. And yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. I think it's interesting as well
it
because
would have just been great if they cast Christopher Walken to play Max Schreck as well. So he's like,
what's it?
wait, is he the same character as in Batman? What?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's there's odd like connections between the movies and different actors and stuff. Like this movie's produced by Nicolas Cage because he originally wanted to play the role of the vampire in the
Right. Yep.
movie. And like, I mean, he had already played a vampire, but like, of course, then he went on to play Dracula in Renfield, and basically was the best thing about that movie. And
See, I was kind of the opposite opinion of that.
really,
I found him a little bit too like I know he was trying to do kind of a pastiche of the
yeah,
classic kind of movie serials and stuff,
yeah.
but it kind of didn't fit so much with the actual drama between Renfield and
And
the yeah police character and everything. I thought it was like I don't know,
oh,
I
that
was
yeah,
more engaged in their story. But then every time there was a fight
profound. Yeah,
sequence, this CGI weird Play-Doh looking blood splatter would happen. And
yeah.
then once they'd cut away from that splatter, no one was covered in blood. I'm like, hang on, the whole scene just erupted in blood, but
Yeah.
there's no blood anywhere. That doesn't make any sense.
That's modern filmmaking for you. I just like the way that he acted like uh, a jilted lover
Yeah.
when he finds out that his man has been off gallivanting with some other woman, and it's like, oh well, when are you
Yeah,
going to
some of
bring me
the
my
lines
dinner?
were so funny as well. It
Yeah.
was just like, yeah.
Oh, where's my dinner? Hmm? I just like that was great. But yeah, Shadow of the Vampire. I mean, it's kind of I think it was a bit of a flop, but it's a movie that everybody seems to enjoy. Like it really was kind of um, a cult favorite for a lot of people, and I think that really does have to do with Willem Dafoe. I mean, they're making more connections as well. They're making a remake of another remake of Nosferatu at the moment. Robert Eggers is directing it, and that one's going to have Nicholas Hoult and Willem Dafoe in it. So yeah, it's kind of
Who else can we get in there? This is gonna
I
be great.
know. Like, I know there's been a lot of vampire movies. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of crossover, but come on. Uh, but yeah,
See,
so I mean,
this is where we need to bring Christopher Walken in, but then also bring John Travolta in to play his wife, so we can do a hairspray connection as
oh
well.
Jesus. But yeah, I mean, as I say, this is a movie that I definitely keep coming back to. Shadow the Vampire. Like when just the first movie that I thought of when I was thinking, okay, this is my favorite vampire, my favorite Dracula or whatever, and it always keeps coming back to this one. And yeah, it really is because of I think it really is because of Willem Dafoe in this movie. Like I believe he got an Academy, yeah, he got an Academy Award nomination, but of course he didn't win, which I think was a real pity. But
Yeah.
yeah, but definitely Shadow the Vampire, definitely Max Schreck from Shadow the Vampire is my favorite vampire in film.
Awesome. And now, Lee, who are your favorite vampires?
I am going to go in complete different direction, and I'm going to go with the TV series, and that is Vampire Diaries. And not everyone's cup of tea, and I guess with these vampires aren't the older style vampires that are ugly looking and really mean all the time. But I think that's why it appealed to me, because it showed, I guess, if someone turns from being a human, and having a life and having humanity, what it's like to turn and have those urges of needing to feed, but then you destroy the friends and family around you and things like that. So Damon is my favorite vampire, played by Ian Somerhalder, and I think there's always a bit of a rivalry between are you Team Stefan, or are you Team Damon? I like both characters, but I'm going to go Team Damon.
And what
Well,
are
why not a little polygamy? Just like,
the
you've got eternity, so play around.
and from a purely selfish question, but I got to interview the cast of the originals on a panel once. They were all pretty nice. Are any of the originals in that list, seeing it's a spin-off of the Vampire Diaries?
What do you mean?
Or in the favorite vampires, are any of the originals worth a mention?
I don't know. I'm just gonna stick with Damon.
Okay.
I hear great things about the originals as well. Like
Yeah, I do
I've
love
seen the
that series
first
as well.
series of the Vampire Diaries. It didn't quite sit well with me. I think I found it a little too soap opera-y or
It
something
is. It's
like
more
that.
for. I
It's
feel
Dawson's
it's
Creek with fangs, but that's
Yeah.
Kevin Williamson wrote it. So yeah.
I think it's
But
not like
but
for
I
young
kind of
people
want
at
to get
heart.
into it as well. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's definitely, I think, more that for young people at heart.
Is there 2 spin-offs now? There's a spin-off set at the school as well.
Is that
The
Legacy
original
or
Yeah,
something?
yeah.
Legacies?
Yeah.
I haven't
The original
seen all of that
cheerleaders.
yet.
Yeah.
But I guess there's a lot of story around the town of Mystic Falls, and it is a very mysterious place. So good name. And then
We
you
had to have
have
vampires.
that's right. Then you have a young girl, Lena, who played by Nina Dobrev, who's mixed up again amongst it all and becomes friends with vampire brothers, I guess. But through it all too, you get to see it goes back in time from when the two brothers turned. And so they turned at about 25 years old. I think that was Damon's age when he turned. And then, so in the series, he's about 170 years old, but looks about 25 years old. And so it goes back and it shows how he turned and all those sorts of things. And there's some really quite interesting scenes in there. But I think I just love how it goes from turning on your humanity to turning off your humanity. And so that means that the character of Damon, there's times where, you love him because he's showing compassion and trying not to harm people. And then there's times where his humanity's off and he's just become a ripper, basically, and he does not care who he kills or how he kills them. And so you have this love-hate relationship with his character. But overall, you're hoping that he comes through and you're hoping the best for him, I guess.
Yeah, it's true. I think that was actually the best part of the series from my point of view, was kind of watching that conflict of character and what they do to kind of, protect the girl they like, as well as,
yes,
that memory that, oh, she looks like the one that turned him, or whatever was going on there. So yeah, that was the interesting dynamic, and I like it when it looks at things that way in a real character perspective.
yeah. So obviously, being a whole series, you get to see the characters develop. You see new characters come in. You see characters killed. You see characters come back to life sometimes, obviously. And so yeah, just that whole world of it's very, I guess, intriguing and draws you in. And because it's not just a one-off movie, then you're really connected to all the characters. So I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I really think, because obviously it's set in a high school with Elena being a teenager growing up as well. And so you get that kind of, the school storylines and what happens when vampires come into the school. There's vampire slayers, of course, like who's going to kill the vampires. And then there's other characters as well, like wolves and stuff that come in. But yeah, the originals is pretty cool as well, I have to say.
Yep. All right, so mine. So of course, I am a huge Buffy fan. So yeah, Spike and Drusilla get a mention, but I also want to mention Vampire Harmony, played by Mercedes McNabb, when she gets turned. But
Yeah.
also the Master, I thought, was a pretty cool kind of vampire that they had in there as well. But I think my favorite vampire from the whole Buffy franchise was Vampire Willow from the Doppelganger episode where Willow turns into this really deadly vampire who has a sight set on Xander for most of the episode.
Vampire movies love doppelgangers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another one that I know is in a
Forward
movie.
now.
Another one that's in a movie that a lot of people hate, but I really like the character of is Aussie actress Peter Wilson played Mina Harker in The League of Extraordinary
Oh, yeah.
Gentlemen. And I really, really like the way that she plays that part, even though the film is not the best film, I guess is probably
Big shoes to fill being based on that Alan Moore graphic novel.
yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Yeah, I remember looking forward to it because of, where it, what it was based on. But I know I saw it, but I could barely tell you anything about it now. It has not stayed in my memory.
Yeah. I also like the Stuart Townsend version of Lestat in Queen of the Damned, the heavy metal singing Lestat, which I thought was played pretty well by him. Getting into my top ones though, a little vampire called Eli, played by Lena Leanderson, in Let the Right One In, the Scandinavian film, which of course was remade with Chloe Grace Moretz playing that part. But I just like how deadly the Scandinavian version is with Lena Lenderson in that role. But my favorite vampire of all time is from a television series, but it wasn't an ongoing character. So in an episode of the X-Files called 3, there's an episode where Mulder gets called to investigate these murders, and the cops investigating them think that it's just murders being done by a serial killer. But as Mulder starts to investigate, he finds this woman who calls herself the Unholy Spirit, played by Justina Vale, who normally seduces businessmen in town at conferences and then kills them in their hotel room or in a spa, where we see her kill the first one. And then these other two characters called the father and the son come and eat the victim. Now, they are vampires. Mulder finds out that they are actually vampires, and I think he actually sleeps with the Unholy Spirit, if I remember the episode
Of course
correctly.
he does.
But
Yeah.
they are actually vampires.
I'm pretty sure he wrote that in his contract.
Yeah. The three of them are actually vampires, but of course the FBI end up putting it down as them being serial killers. But I just love that way that they do that, where the vampires are basically serial killers. Like, they're just everyday people, but they've got this demon inside them. So I really like the way they did that in the X-Files. So
Yeah, that was an interesting one, actually.
yeah, so probably Justina Vale's portrayal of the Unholy Spirit would be my favorite on-screen vampire of all time. So that wraps up our list of best vampires. And of course, if you love vampire films, head on to the Subculture socials and let us know who your favorite vampire is. And if you do, you'll be in the running to win a double pass to Dracula Voyage of the Demeter, which is coming out through Studio Canal on August the 10th. So make sure you're into that competition if you want to try and win one of those double passes. But for now, we'll be back in just a moment on centralcoastradio.com.